Excellent. Good morning, everyone. This is Rob Hirschfeld. It's our weekly planning call for Crowbar 2 Refactor. This is part of a weekly cadence of calls. The objective of today's call is to discuss what has happened in the last sprint. We're doing weekly sprints and review process shortly to make sure everybody is working efficiently, and then discuss plans for the upcoming week of effort so that we can coordinate it. The purpose here is not to do design. We have another meeting on Tuesdays where we talk about design topics. And so what we're really trying to do here is focus on coordination of effort. And so our purpose for that is to... Could whoever just joined mute, please? Thank you. And figure out how to best work together. Design topic, we do talk about design, but if we need to, we'll parking lot it or bring it up for next Tuesday or take it offline. Enough background on that. If you're interested in reading more about how this process works, the bit.ly Crowbar 2 will take you to the Crowbar 2 homepage on the Crowbar Wiki, which has our past minutes and recordings, some background of what we're trying to do, and technical review for the project. This current sprint is 0823, coincidentally also today's date. And the Tuesday information that we had is going to be in the last week's sprint, which is here. We take notes in the wiki pads and we track that. One of the requests that we had was to expose these notes about our CMDB workflows. So I've turned that into a public note, and then we'll talk about this page when we get to it. Any questions before we start? Excellent. So, all right, so talked about agenda. So accomplishments for this sprint. Boy, I need to think this through. We probably should be populating this a little bit before the meeting starts. One of the major things that we've been doing is renaming proposals to be bar clamp configurations. There was a considerable amount of discussion about that. And if somebody wants to help take notes, that would be great. I'm happy to do that. So this work, thank you. This work has been making a lot of progress. I believe Andy Apes has been doing this work, and it's I think mostly done, but I don't think it's complete yet. It'll continue. Another thing that went along with this, or in conjunction, we have somebody working, I guess this is a planned item because he hasn't done it yet. We're removing offline mode. Offline mode was meant to allow the system to operate without Chef, and since we can now operate without Chef, that's a good thing. We've got somebody with a lot of noise in the background. All right, please mute if you're not speaking. Thank you. Boy, I'm trying to think of. Greg's been working considerably on some jobs, some refactoring of how the jobs system works. Victor's made a huge amount of progress on the dev tool, changes for multiple repos, and then there's a coming change about dev tool. I'm just parking lotting these, and we'll talk about them more, for branch simplification. We made some progress on API documentation stubs. Network objects have been coming in and making some progress. A lot of work's been done on the BDD and unit test frameworks. including documentation of those, and we can show how that's coming. A lot of these things are going to get simpler to find when we merge Rails 3. When we merge Rails 3 and DB into the trunk. We'll talk about that. Greg, did you join? I'm thinking through major movements for Crowbar 2. One of the other things is that we've been looking at SUSE's bugs. So we really appreciate you guys forwarding the bugs to us. We had talked about this in the last sprint. We've been reviewing those and pulling the changes. Some of them into Fred and some of them into trunk. I think that's... Does anybody else on the Dell side want to chime in of components and things that have made progress? I'm thinking through what everybody on the team has been doing. Oh, I'm sorry. So the main topic from this review is CMDB, and there's a considerable amount of time spent on CMDB integrations and pulling that together and getting all that stuff working. So that's been a big factor. And we believe very strongly that having a strong test framework coverage is essential, and so we've also invested time in tooling and test coverage in advance because we don't want to be in a position where we don't have good coverage. So we're correcting that debt before we get too much further along. Greg, is there something I'm missing in this list?
I don't think so. The job factor rework stuff we didn't do. We more design as part of the CMDB discussion stuff. It hasn't been implemented.
Okay.
I can't see your screen anymore.
Interesting. I can see it on my backup system.
No. I deliberately can't. I'm beginning to try that.
Oh, sorry. Of course. Got it. All right. No worries. I will compensate with extra verbalization. So one of the things I'll do is I'll track as a potential topic the job system for the design meeting. I know we had a couple of things that we wanted to that might be something for 2 sprints out, depending on how things are going. Do you want to take a paragraph and describe a little bit about what the job system stuff is, so people have a preview of what the discussion will be?
Sure. I'm not sure when it's going to hit. It may get further out than that. Anyway, just so that is that with all of this rework and already do beforehand.
I lost Greg. I think we did. So I'll pick up on that. The idea is that we have a asynchronous queuing system. It's a core part of how Crowbar is going to operate. It sort of is like that now, but we're formalizing it. We're using a job runner queuing system, and so what we want to do is formalize the construction of how jobs interact with the system. There'll be a job class. Bar clamps will be able to inject subclass jobs that do actions and take actions within the system in an asynchronous way. And the design that Greg is playing with involves making all actions that bar clamps take jobs and make them all asynchronous. And that would provide a consistent framework for how things operate. Locking for resourcing for jobs, meaning I've designed systems that do very similar things in the past, actually on virtual machines. And one of the challenges with that is resource locking. And what we believe is that the state system provides a granular enough mechanism to do resource locking. So if you have a job and it needs to act on certain nodes, it can interact with the state of those nodes, essentially reserve them or wait for them to be available to be reserved, execute the job or start sub-jobs that can then interact as children. It's a pretty sophisticated thing. The patterns are fairly well known, and we're not trying to be inventive on the jobs pattern. So we'll have some design discussions coming up with that. It's certainly not set in stone, but it seems like a necessary pattern for this. And there's some interesting granularity events because of the matrix between the bar clamps, which are horizontal layers, and the nodes, which are effectively vertical layers. Greg, I did the summary when you dropped off. Cool. BDD and unit testing is another one that's dear to my heart because I'm doing the coding on it on the BDD side. But no problem. That's all right. I did a short summary of it. Right. All right. Thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'll do a video, or we'll talk about it in design, because it really is important for us to have high test unit coverage. And yes, Simon's right to be noting that the web UI needs to be asynchronous. That's not so much a plan for this sprint, but it's a design impact. So these are things that we're going to consider. We're a long way away from taking that into account in the next sprint. Okay. Unless somebody has another item from this last week, I won't. One thing I would encourage, if we don't have that big an audience, I'll send this out to the list, is if you're a member of the OpenStack Foundation, today is the last day to vote. I will add that as the first process item. All right. So this is the point in the meeting where, actually, I'll stop before I jump into process. Is there anybody from the community who has Crowbar collaborations or contributions from the week that they want to discuss?
Yes.
Excellent, Simon. No. All right, Adam, go ahead.
Rather than waste time listening to me thinking about it, maybe I could just sort of write some things down on Etherpad while you're talking about other stuff.
Yeah, we have really appreciated sharing that. You guys are finding great stuff, and we're incorporating that into Trunk also. That's been really good.
This thing where it tries to do a recursive merge of default attributes from the node's role into the node's normal attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a number of problems with that. Firstly, it's not recursive. So I've changed that to a deep merge as implemented by Chef. But I'm still don't really understand why that was there in the first place. And it's caused us some sort of major problems in that ultimately it's resulted in SSH authorized keys being wiped out from off-managed nodes, which means that future proposals can't, they fail to apply until the next, 15 minutes later when the Chef client runs again and restores the authorized keys file to something correct. So that's been a fairly major bug for us that all stems from this failed recursive merge. So I'd really appreciate understanding why that's there and what it's supposed to do and whether our fix is the right one.
I think Greg looked at this, or at least was tracked with your bug and did a little bit of thinking on it. Greg, do you want to comment on that?
I saw your email issue, and I haven't had time to full analysis of it. It's probably fine. Keep recursive merge trying to just make sure we've copied all of the stuff from the Chef hash tables, which aren't really hash tables, right, or hash maps or whatever you want to call them, into the proper tree structure. And so that we need to make sure that the roles that are getting written are correct. That's why they're actually done indirectly in a couple of places. And so, and thinking about it a little bit, this could explain a couple of weirdnesses that we've seen every now and then. But it's probably fine. I just need to spend more time and look at it to make sure. And I haven't had time to do that yet. Okay, what I've also done is I've created a separate commit to the fix which adds in debug, which basically iterates recursively through the two sets of attributes and tries to spot attributes which would have been changed as a result of this bug, and then logs those as a warning so we can just keep an eye on what possible effect this bug may have had, just to help get a feel for what impact the fix is going to have, because at the moment I'm slightly worried due to my lack of understanding that the fix might have some other unexpected side effects. So this extra debug commit will hopefully help us keep an eye on that and spot it ahead of time. Okay, that sounds good.
The timing on this is good. We're queuing up for a maintenance release on the Fred branch. So getting these types of things in, we'll be doing a QA pass also. So Adam, we can collaborate on regression pass, and any changes that we can make collaboratively like this. You'll also get regression that we're doing based on. I guess the new SX patch code.
Okay, great. We're near the end of our release cycle. We're heading hopefully rapidly towards a gold master candidate. So, to a certain extent, because we're sort of so preoccupied with that and trying to make it as stable as possible, you're kind of getting less information from us than we would normally like to be providing, and sort of in the future after we're a bit less panicked, and hopefully for this kind of thing, as soon as we see it, we can open an issue on your GitHub so that you get immediate visibility of it, and then any commits that, proposed fixes or anything that we have, we can immediately sort of point you to, again, on GitHub via the reference from those issues, so that even if, we haven't got around to issuing a pull request, you still kind of have more visibility, whereas, at the moment now, I'm aware that if we only track them in our Bugzilla, even if we're CCing you individually, that's kind of not an ideal way of, collaborating with the Crowbar community as a whole. So I think it will get better after the next couple of weeks or so.
Good. It's good for us to ramp the way we're doing, because that way we don't get flooded. We get some time to adapt. So it's a good start. We're looking forward to more. Okay. As far as other process changes or things like that, feedback about the meetings. How things are going. One thing that I would note on this, we missed getting a recording of the last design session. So one of the things that we're trying to do on our team is have redundant recordings set up. I have no problem if somebody else from the community wants to help record or make sure that we get recordings for this. That would help make sure that we have a second source. But because it's there are times even for the design review that we just had, I think there are people on our team who missed it who would be interested in going back and reviewing it. So it happens. I record, I wouldn't say hundreds, but dozens of meetings and events like this, and I missed the first two, getting the first two done. So it doesn't take much to have a botched recording, and I think duplication would be useful. What I might do is I might ask Simon to help coordinate to make sure we have backup. We have two recording sources. Simon, can you take that on? Sorry? Okay. But I think it's really important that we record. We work to have redundant. If you want to be the primary, then that's perfectly fine. And the same is true where I'm actively working to not be the one who opens the meetings. Simon's been out for a week, so we'll continue to transition coordination of these meetings over to Simon. And so that brings us. Let's see. Yeah, we have. I think we have a backlog of design topics. I'm not sure that this is a problem. It's probably a good thing. And I don't know that we want to invest more time right now in spending more time doing design discussions. Are people okay with that? So for something like the BDD system, which is not so much a design topic as a training topic, are people comfortable with me throwing a recording out there instead of doing an interactive session? Or would an interactive session be more important?
I think a recording is fine. It's just a personal opinion of mine. Recording is fine, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'd really rather the times when we have to do synchronous meetings like this, where we want somebody to be able to speak up and say, "Hey, I have a question." those times are precious. I want to not use them for one-way dialogues. And my goal is that when we start doing sprint reviews, as you know, I know when Susei comes online, we'll be collaborating much more on what the review is, rather than it being me talking as much about what the Dell team's been doing. Other topics for process before I cover the permanent one of, are these times still working?
Are there any thoughts about at some point in the future looking in the code review process like Garrett or something like that? I mean, I guess right now with all the refactoring it doesn't make sense, but I guess looking further into the future, as we have more stable branches and so on, well, even now with Fred, I suppose it might make sense. I don't know. Just thinking out loud, really.
So today, what we've got is all of the code that comes through is via push request or pull request, and we do actually make sure on our team that we cross review with some exceptions, but for the most part we use pull requests as the gate mechanism.
That's fine for now, but I think as the community starts to grow, it would be useful if people outside Dell could be involved in that review process, and I don't think GitHub lets you do that. It's more about just doing single policy.
Greg?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I'm not sure we're ready to do that yet. But we've thought about it. It'll change some of our workflow class paths, and we haven't had, for example, the test framework, unit test kind of stuff in place where I would like to kind of have that and also engage at the same time. Because with regards to the reviews are really good, but I think the unit test kind of framework that if you pass it, if nothing else is the web app a function. Those steps totally longer, don't you? Should be kind of brought in at the same time, and we're close to having the unit test up, right? So that you can start being extended in it. So I think the next step will be review system.
Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Hundreds of things. This is hundreds of things to do that's not bubbled up right now yet.
So yeah, and that reminds me to talk about the changes to branching a little bit, which is really a process change. Well, actually, I'll throw it to you in a second, Greg. Yeah, I have the same expectation on documentation with the changes we've made to the doc system. If you make a change that impacts documentation, there'd be an expectation we could get reviews on updates to documentation, so we don't get behind on that also. We will, Adam, you're right. We'll look in. I think that we can add people besides Dell to the approver list for these different projects. And there's some of the changes that Greg is thinking through for branching will make it where since the bar clamps are going to be more independent, we might be able to allow delegate reviews of individual bar clamps. Which is an interesting aspect of what we're talking about doing. Shoot, boy, we're going to need to do another video. So training videos are going to be owed on the following topics: the BDD and unit tests, and then we also have to do a dev tool training with the new remote strategy. One of the things that we've talked about in several meetings is changes to make it easier for Susei's code process. and actually the changes we're making make it easier for our code processes too. But we're making the origin allow you to have multiple origins and switch between your origins, so that it's much clearer and easier to have your code sourced from multiple places, which would allow, among other things, you to bring in somebody else's work, whole Crowbar tree, and then execute and test that whole Crowbar tree. Greg was saying that this is one of the things that would make it easier to do a gated review, because then you could point to somebody's repo, pull in all their work, test it in situ, and so as a pre-commit step, you could actually do a authoritative build of the commit of the merge request. So things like that are really moving us down the path. Along those lines, one of the things that we found is very confusing to people is the current branching strategy and submodules. And we were talking through, and I'll let Greg explain it, about the changes for branching and submodules.
Yeah, so what we came up yesterday afternoon, as many of you know, especially Adam and his team, dealing with our submodule weird tree and chain, and leads a lot of problems with regard to synchronized, knowing you're building the right set of things, tracking things, merging, and the whole hierarchical nature of our tree. We did a little analysis, or I did a little analysis, and realized that really the only difference in the Crowbar tree among all of release branches, so like the master of tech, OS build, the new OS build, the minor OS build, are like 4 files. And so the insanity, and we end up not using the submodule hard referencing at all, really, because whenever somebody makes a program change, we immediately try and update and reference all of the subtrees. So that was just like, why are we using submodules at all? On heading, really to get out of things, we had people doing changes in DevTool because they didn't extend the made and necessarily realized they weren't on the right branches, and they ended up doing a git command that follows their normal historical workflows outside of the DevTool. They lose all sorts of things. So one of the things that we wanted to think we could do is to basically remove all of that and put it into, flatten all that into Crowbar, a single Crowbar branch, where the actual thing that you're going to build is defined by a file or a set of files in the release kind of tree. And that flows out under there, and then you have specific bar clamps on each of those, and their remote and their repos and stuff like that. So that if and when you need to actually hard lock a specific thing to a specific branches branch level to a particular release, you can have that in the file in automated ways. Basically lock that code path in place. This way, we can get rid of all the big things. It gets rid of any 500 for commit or check-in, things like we create on the Crowbar tree, so that the commit history actually looks kind of sane. It allows us to start doing more of the incremental thing and building that allows us to things like, okay, it'd be really cool to pull them as a Spark lamp or a database Spark lamp into the Crowbar tree to let create a release of that. Right now, you would be in some special house trying to figure out how to pull a part of the thing from one location, but just you could just build something and test it. And then merging or adding in a new bar clamp to a release is editing one file instead of trying to gyrate through the 15 git commands and making them all line up. That's one of some of the many reasons. Others are, I spend half my time making sure references are synced. We have Jenkins jobs that are running that are trying to do this and get it wrong. There's a whole set of problems and complexities that go away, as well as if you've ever looked at the unfortunate and woe be it to any of us that is getting hit by a bus. So we think like the complexity of death toll will go down by about 70%. So that's what we're looking at. Not sure. I want to write it up and send it out to the community feedback. I'm getting internal feedback right now, and then want to send that out to the community to see what they see and feel and stuff. And I think part of this also lets us work better with other partners, not just the state, in the sense that when we have other people making public park plans, we can have ways for them to be included without having to go through the whole GitHub synchronization, Git module nightmares. That's kind of a very simplified overview of it. But
no, I think that was great. We took on submodules with a bit of angst when we did it, and I think they've helped us a lot, and the costs are now outweighing the benefits. All right, so I'm going to wrap the process side, although everything sort of blends together with this anyway.
Usually, with that said,
yeah.
I think Adam, at some point before we do it, I want to get yours and your team's feedback on it. Make sure that it makes sense for y'all. I think some of the remote stuff that you've been doing helps alleviate some of the problems that you guys are having. But I think this will also help as well. But I want to make sure that it's something that's workable with y'all. Yeah, great. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Definitely, those were by far and away the two biggest issues that we've been having. One around the ability to have like a SUSE collective team set of repositories that were distinct from individual repositories, and also this problem of the endless merges in the Git history, which make it really hard to follow where code is going, or how it's flowing between branches. So it sounds like that new plan is going to really help with that, which is great. I didn't quite follow how it will work, but I guess if you're going to put together some document or video or whatever, or some kind of proposal, then we'd be really happy to review that and let you know what we think. Yeah, it's right now a big email across the team. So, the next step is to probably dump it into the Crowbar speak-in page and then publish that.
I have a pause for a second. Surya is saying he can't hear anything. Did you resolve your sound issues? Greg, you dialed in on the internal bridge, right?
The 1862.
Okay, you're on the external bridge. Is anybody on the phone on the internal bridge? Interesting.
I'm also external.
Okay. I can't easily test it. So, Greg, you want to talk for a second while I work with Surya and see if I can get his audio working about the decision or not decision to merge and Rails 3DB into Trunk? Is that going to happen?
No. Actually, this leads to the topic. Most likely this week we'll have very little Crowbar 2 work to it. for in comparison to the past. We had some internal, that's like Tuesday's mentioning that they're starting to do a finalization run through some of their releases. Most likely we will be focusing on getting further along on our quick release for Red. There's been some internal pressures raised on that, so we will most likely have to put more resources on that effort right now, which is good. You'll start seeing some changes in the, not changes, they're not big, they're probably more support changes in the spread trees. And so we'll have to see what we actually end up planning, because that's kind of internal politics of pushing that probably to a higher priority, which will probably affect us for a week, maybe two, on some of the Crowbar 2. With that said, we still probably will have a few resources on some things, but I'm not sure what's going to shake out right now.
That's a good alert. So do you think that means we'll push off the merge into trunk?
It's entirely possible that the merge into trunk and the tree conversion from submodules and all that stuff will get pushed at least a week, if not two.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but certain reality is working in a big way.
Right. The other item is we are also we're also discussing Folsom. So I'm bringing that up here. We haven't committed on that, but we're at least discussing if we want to do some Folsom work. I'm not looking for answers, but if community is interested in that, it's something to bring to the next planning cycle. Talk through what we if there's interest in spending the engineering resources on accomplishing some of that. All right. So this is likely pushed off. Removing online mode is a background task that we have somebody doing as they're coming up to speed on the code. They're going back through that. You'll likely see that. We're looking for community feedback on DevTool branch simplification and on API standards. And then let's see. And then for the API standards piece. Let's see, and I committed to getting training materials on training materials on the testing framework. No, I have already produced training materials on how to create documentation, and I'm adding to the documentation on how to write documentation. So all those things will be expectations for Crowbar 2 developers to be familiar with. And I'll put it up on the screen. I'll include the link. So one of the things that we've been doing is trying to make sure that as we go through and refactor, we're creating consistency with the API. And doing that in a way that is planned. And so sorry about that. So what's happening with this is that we're trying to get the documentation right for the APIs. And so this is likely a topic of design, but it's not worth having people discuss if discuss it without having being able to review it in advance. I highly recommend, if since we're doing this in Markdown, because that's what the documentation supports, if you want to edit the Markdown, or at least read the Markdown, it's really handy to use the Markdown converter editor tool. But do not paste directly back over this, because you are likely to whack out other people's changes. Even though this will track it, it's not friendly to do that. And so what we've got is basic contracts, lists, CRUD, and bar clamps. Bar clamps have their own distinct needs for API, and then some expectations on what the documentation will be around the tool. And there already is in the developer's guide a API documentation sub area where we're starting to maintain the calls, and there's BDD test coverage. There's external test coverage of the APIs, RESTful APIs, to make sure that they comply with the expected contracts. So please review that. That's important. Some of the workflow job changes are being discussed. They were discussed on Tuesday, and there's a design page that we put up for that. This is last sprint. This is this sprint. Oops, and that was the wrong. The API is not set yet. We're still trying to get feedback. Other planned items to discuss? Depending on what our allocation looks like, you'll continue to see work on the network models, on user auth. Some of that's starting to surface now. UI refactor. It's refactoring for this, and then also the proposal to configuration change. All those things are coming, but slowly.
Rob, how do we see these evolving changes? Should we go in and see the personal repos?
The changes should be showing up in the Rails and 3 and DB branch. So if you're on master for this branch, you will see the changes. That's where all the commits are coming to. One second. So here. Rails 3 and DB master. So this is where you're going to see the commits and the pulls. And one of the simplest things to do. Whoops. Oh. One of the simplest things to do is come over here, and you can look at the Dell Cloud Edge pull requests. This is you should be able to see, even though you can't grant them, you should be able to at least see the activity and see what's going on for our pull requests. And when you look at those, here's the closed ones. So what you can do is, and this is exactly the thing that Greg is talking about that's confusing. There's 5 pull requests. Only this one had any actual code change in it. But you could look at the differences here and very quickly see what had changed within the code. This looks like a mess because of the way the merge looks, and I did a lot of refactoring in BDD. But so that's where you can go to see what the changes have been. I will also paste this link here once I get to the right window. All right, and then the final question I put off is, are these meeting times still working for people?
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes they're a little tricky for our team, but I think for the most part they're worth maintaining as is. So excellent. All right, everybody, I'm ready to wrap the meeting up. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Not for me. Normally, anybody logs into the IRC from the Crowbar team? Like questions or anything of that sort?
You're asking if you want to ask questions?
Yeah, if anybody in the Crowbar team is on the IRC, Crowbar IRC.
We cannot access Crowbar IRC. We're working on that. There's a Skype channel that you can join, and that works internal to Dell, and therefore we collaborate on that. If you send a contact request to Dell Crowbar, which is the Skype account I maintain for this, I will drag you into the main Crowbar chat. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I wish we could maintain the IRC. We are actively working very hard to get access to it so that we can use IRC.
Yeah, that would be great for me as well. Because quite often there are little things little questions that arise, and if there was somebody available to answer them quickly, then sometimes that can be easier than an email for the list.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send. Is that okay if I send a contact request for that Skype?
Yes.
Or is that just
No, that's that's the process.
Great. Yeah, it seems that we use IRC pretty heavily. That would fit into our workflow, but I guess Skype. Well, yeah, I don't know how many people in the office use Skype. I do, but I'm not sure about the others.
Yeah, and please include the word bar clamp, even though I know you guys, but the policy has been that if you put the word bar clamped in the request body, then I know then I know what you want. I'll add you. Keeps me from getting spammed. Okay. All right, with that, I'm going to close the call. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you on Tuesday.